The response very generally is ostrich-like. It just seems so hard and so terrible that people really are shy away from it. And also, it was all very heavily classified until a few years ago. There's still many aspects of it that are classified, but the basics about the satellite being able to have a nuclear weapon and detonate and cause the magnetic radio waves is known and is now unclassified. I think that is part of it. Part of it is that people figure that if it's that devastating, it must be extremely expensive to fix. But according to the commission report, the Congressional Commission, protecting the key parts of the electric grid would only be about $2 billion, which is pocket change in the world of modifying the electric grid. It's probably several tens of billions to do it all and do it right, but $2 billion is a modest share of Canadian and American coffee drinkers stopping at Starbucks on the way into work in the morning and getting a single shot espresso instead of a venti, watch it, save $5 or $6. And if, say, 10% of the population does that once a week or even once a month, you've probably paid for hardening the grid. I mean, we're not talking about the technology that's extremely sophisticated because we have to protect the grid against lightning anyway, and many of the things that we need, Faraday cages and so forth, to protect the transformers and other parts of the grid, we already use something very much like what we would need in other circumstances. There's one more aspect of this I should mention, which is people say, well, if somebody launches something like this, why don't we just shoot it down? The answer is we may well not know which of those satellites up there is the North Korean electromagnetic pulse generating satellite. The North Koreans and the Iranians have both practiced launching ballistic missiles carrying satellites to the south instead of to the north. When we put up our warning systems and our defenses against attack during the Cold War, we assumed that an attack was going to be coming from the north, from the Soviet Union or China, so it would come more or less over the North Pole, and that's where our radars and our infrared sensors and other sensors are focused. But you don't need to do that if what all you're doing is putting the satellite in orbit. You're not shooting at anything on the ground, you're just putting it in orbit. So both the North Koreans and the Iranians have launched satellites toward the south. That means they come up on Canada and the US in the midst of a lot of other polar satellites that are in these polar orbits, and you don't know where it came from or when it was launched or what it is, and there are lots of satellites up there. So it's not as if you could track it from its initial launch. That's not easy to do with the sort of thing that I've described. I was very critical of the agreement that got signed with the Iranians. The biggest problem for that is that we had frozen some $150 billion worth of their funds in the banking system because of their violations of earlier treaties and their position as the world's leading terrorist power. But this agreement has been interpreted by the White House as essentially taking away any need to maintain any sanctions on Iran, even though Iran has not fully complied with its duties under this agreement. For example, it hasn't delivered all of the agreement yet. We're still waiting to see what's in some of the sections that have not been presented to us. It was a very bad idea to sign that agreement, but the main thing that it did that's a problem from what we've been talking about here is that it turned loose something approaching $150 billion. That's billion with a B, to the Iranians that had been sequestered before, and that frees them up not only with satellites and nuclear weapons and whatever else they may want to work on, but also to take up even more resolutely than they already have their position as the world's leading terrorist sponsoring state. The Revolutionary Guard, I think, will have a lot more money to use in their terrorist operations around the world as a result of this agreement. The North Koreans are inscrutable to a fare thee well. They are very, very hard to figure out. They have negotiated very cleverly with us, and we have given in to them too easily, both on matters such as their nuclear program and on opening up a bank that we had closed down because a lot of the North Korean illegal money goes through it in Macau. There are just a number of things that leave one scratching one's head about North Korean behavior. Whatever it is, it's, I think, not likely to be anything other than highly damaging and extremely unpleasant. Whether it will be absolutely catastrophic for North America and perhaps much of the rest of the world is it's hard to say, but I think the two leaders in the world that I would least like to see have nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to put satellites in orbit and to be able to take advantage of the technology of electromagnetic pulse are Khamenei in Iran, and he may be just a few months to a very few years away from having a nuclear weapon. He already has ballistic missiles. And the other would be Kim Jong-un, and he already has ballistic missiles and satellite capability.